just to start this off, a bit of a broad question, but I'd like to see what you think about this, which is what does being respected at work mean to you?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I think for me personally, it means that my expertise and my knowledge are trusted. I feel like one of the hardest things for me is when I've gone through, sometimes quite grueling interview processes and have even been headhunted for my expertise. And then when you're actually in your role, you're constantly having to like defend why you're there, or why what you do matters, and it's like becomes your job to like persuade a whole bunch of people from different, the cross-functional team, about why you deserve to be there in a way, and why they should listen to you. So I think for me, it's kind of having that trust, that being listened to, and being treated like a human being that has, feelings and needs. So I think for me, I think that's from my experience, that's what I've kind of lacked. And in those moments that I felt disrespected, I think those were the things that were missing. Yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting question. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? And I totally agree with what you're saying because exactly, you get interviewed for a reason for those skills, and then you
Yes.
feel like spend the rest of your life, your job life, having to go
On
through this
trial.
interview, yeah, all the way. It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a strange process, and I'm not really sure why companies behave this way. It doesn't really make sense.
No, it's a I think it's a constant way of kind of reminding you of your place sometimes. And not every working environment is like that, but I think from our experiences working at kind of bigger corporate tech focused companies, that where it's very difficult to get hired at some of these places, and don't they never let you forget that. Like you're constantly having to like be reminded, like, aren't you lucky to be here? Look at all these things that we give you. It can be
God.
really, really challenging.
Definitely. Now, obviously, this sort of ties in, which is, as a result, like I find like women are having to constantly try and prove themselves in a way. So, how do you think women can sort of get away from being boxed in, of having it all, and then eventually just burning out? So, how do they
Yeah.
avoid getting like put into this box of having to constantly prove
Mm.
themselves and then just basically burning out as a result?
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the question? That's sort of the question I kind of sought out when I was writing this book rather selfishly, was like, how do we stop that? Um, I think it's important to acknowledge that there's kind of the system is not set up for us to succeed totally. And it's one way if you are a white woman, if you're a woman of color, if you have any sort of disability or neurodifference, it just gets harder and harder and harder and harder, right? Um, so no, we don't have a blanket experience as women, but I think there are things that you can do, or at least make it feel like you're doing something. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you will just hit a brick wall, and I hate that. And I don't like to just go, well, sometimes there's just nothing you can do. But I do think it is important to go, there's only so much personal responsibility we can take with some of this stuff. But I think it's important to kind of explore what it is that you can do. I think with regards to constantly having to prove yourself and then burning out, I think job choice when it comes to that is really important. Um, if you're somewhere where, like we were just describing, you have to constantly kind of prove why you're there and why you should be there, and your expertise over and over again, maybe that's not the team for you. Maybe that's not the company for you. So I think that getting yourself out of those sorts of situations can for sure help. And then, on the other hand, why do you keep burning out? Is it you have too much work on? Is it because your manager actually is expecting you to deliver the moon every single week? Or is it because you're expecting that of yourself? Or you assume that's what your employer is asking of you? Because a lot of times they don't actually want that. It might feel like it, but they don't actually want it. So you might need to have a conversation or two about what they're actually expecting from you, versus what you're just kind of filling in the blanks and thinking that you need to do. There's some really nice stories in the book around women who've just gone, I realized that I could just put in about 40% in this crappy job that I have, and that's fine. And I totally agree with that. I think sometimes it is totally fine to just kind of not check out, but just go, you know what, this is too much. This isn't working for me. And actually, I can put in X amount of effort and no one's going to expect anything different from me. So let me just do that and then take care of these other aspects of my life. And most importantly, your mental health. So
Yeah.
I think that there are some choices that you can make within this awful structure that we've been asked to exist in. But yeah, there's still stuff, I think, that choices that you can make, things you can do, conversations that you can have that can make things a bit easier for yourself.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think sometimes we don't take the onus and have those difficult conversations because I think that we create this sort of boogeyman kind of
Yes.
in our heads where we're just going to go, oh my God, it's going to be the worst situation ever. And yeah, and as a result, I'm sure lots of people are just too afraid
Oh
to,
yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. No, I've done that. You can, especially depending on what your relationship is with like authority and management figures, you can just totally psych yourself out and be like, well, I couldn't ask for that. I can't ask for that. What's the point in me asking if I can, take this time off? I know that we're launching a project at this time. Like I have done that to myself so many times. Instead of just asking, I've just gone, well, this is how it is. Sorry, my Amazon Echo just made a noise in the middle of me talking.
oh
I forgot
yes.
to mute that.
Oh no, that's
Um,
fine. We're in delivery. We're in delivery land now. So
we
yes.
are. But yeah, it's yeah, having to have those difficult conversations and ask for what it is that you actually need. So many managers don't they're not necessarily out to get you. They just kind of don't know what you want. They're not
Yeah,
mind readers, so you kind of have to tell them, which is
that's so
so
true.
annoying, but
Yeah, yeah, it's you do wish they were mind readers. It would just make the
it would be so much
conversation so
easier.
much easier, God. And of course, okay, congratulations on your recent development. I'm really
Thank
excited
you.
for your baby, for the next
Thank
stage
you.
on your life. And obviously you speak about motherhood quite a lot in the book, which is really
Mhm.
important. And given that your own situation has changed, do you feel that mothers can still be respected as employees as well as someone who has children, given that there's so much prejudice still around that
Mhm.
notion?
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to where you're working. I think in the pandemic, we've seen how undervalued parents are in the workplace, how undervalued the necessity for childcare there is. If you follow organizations like Pregnant Then Screwed, who have been doing amazing work throughout the pandemic to fight the government for all the ways in which they've discriminated against or forgotten about pregnant women, and people who have children, parents. It's a mess. So I think um, being respected at work, absolutely, but I think it also depends who you're working with and who you're working for. Because some places, I've interviewed women who have had amazing experiences. I've interviewed women who have had absolutely terrible experiences
Mm.
being a parent at work. So I think for me, it has been I wrote that chapter when I was not pregnant. I'm very explicit about that. I'm like, I don't know. I don't have children. I think I might one day. I don't know. And I think I say in there, I might have to rewrite this entire chapter if I do have children. And here we are. Um, so I think it's writing that chapter was really useful because it opened my eyes to different women's experiences, uh, to how good we actually have it in the UK compared to other countries when it comes to things like maternity leave, which actually doesn't apply to me anymore because I'm self-employed. So I think it's just for me, even as a self-employed person, it was interesting, taking on new clients and contracts that might run over into when I was meant to, have a baby, and just how do I navigate those conversations? And it was weird how actually self-conscious I felt about having that conversation. And thankfully, we've been working from home for so long now. Thankfully, it's a double-edged thing, isn't it? But it means that on Zoom calls, I'm, shoulders up. No one needs to know if they don't need to. But yeah, I remember the first time I had a conversation with a woman who owns her own company, who is also a mother, about some perspective work. And I told her, like, actually, by the time you might want to launch this project, I might be, I think I'm due actually around that same time. And she was like, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Like, we'll figure this out. And I almost cried on the phone with her because I was like, oh, I didn't realize how much I was actually nervous or anxious about having that conversation, and to have another person who has been through that go, oh my God, don't even worry. The relief. I was surprised by the amount of relief. I think it's really complicated still. Really complicated.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like, there's so much that needs to change still, like just having more women on the board for these kind of things, to have those kind of conversations, to make it easy, is really important. But here we are, still waiting. And actually, given that, a lot of mothers do a lot of job sharing, or, work part-time, do you feel like they get the same respect as others because, they do these kind of jobs?
I think flexible working only works sometimes, because I think the idea, and from the parents that I've spoken with, the idea is wonderful. In reality, they end up jamming a 5-day work week into 3 days. Or job shares can be brilliant. And in the book, I have a really great example of how two women have made that work seamlessly. But they have a very specific way of working, and they've had a very supportive woman director, their manager, who was very supportive of it and let them sort that out. My aunt in California has worked for Hewlett Packard for a very long time, and she's been in a job share for ages, before I even really understood what that was. But I think it is still a challenge for people to not have that immediate sort of like prejudice, sort of, oh, you don't work Wednesdays? Oh, you don't work Fridays? Why? What are you doing? Like that thing. And not expecting, like, giving them the same respect and evaluating their work in the same way that you would a full-time employee. I don't know, it's complicated. And I think as someone who's done shift work in a company where I wasn't around as much, you do feel it. You do feel that you're not there for this thing, or you're not able to go to that team event, or make that meeting because it's not when you're working. And that temptation to go, oh, but I could still show up. I mean, that's how I landed myself in therapy. Was completely, there was a lot of other stuff too, but completely overextending myself in a job that I was in, because of that sort of career-based FOMO of like, well, I could just work a 12-hour day. That's fine.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, no, it is. So I think being respected, yes, again, it depends on who you're working for, but I think we still kind of have a long way to go when it comes to actually making that work better for parents. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens next when we kind of get through this pandemic and people have experienced flexible working, remote working in a different way. And also everyone understands how important childcare is.
God.
Hopefully. Wouldn't that be nice? So yeah.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I hope so.
Actually,
and that also ties into like this. Why do you think that people kind of aspire to this sort of really harmful work-life balance? The Instagram lot where they're just like, proud to be working forever and never taking breaks.
I think I think it's rooted in a few things. One immediately pops to mind, the sort of American work culture, which is so unhealthy. I was shocked. So I grew up in California and I moved to the UK when I was 20. And when I heard that you guys get 20, 25, 30 days off of holiday a year as like standard, I was just like, you what? Because I was used to doing like shift work at Starbucks where you had to like accrue 40 hours just to take a week off.
Oh
Or
God.
yeah. Or you get like 2 weeks off in a normal office job. And then like if you're lucky, if you've been there long enough, you might get 3 whole weeks off. So I think some of it is kind of just rooted in that's the structure, that's what's kind of normalized. And then that, of course, American culture kind of bleeds all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And for better or for worse. And then also, I think we had this really, the whole girl boss, lean in, hustle culture that emerged in like, what was it, like 2011, 2013, somewhere along those lines, which was good in the sense that it kind of normalized women wanting to do their own thing and start their own companies, because we have seen an influx of that across the board. But it it was it's a weird combination of feminism and capitalism, which are always at odds with each other. You cannot have a feminist company. Those things don't make sense or work together. And I think we've seen with companies, like the Wing, how that can be really complicated and really complex, because feminism is really complicated and complex. And then when you try to apply that to a building, it doesn't always kind of work. So I think it's kind of rooted in those two things of like glamorizing working and the normalization of I haven't taken a holiday in 3 years. Like, really? That's really not good for you at all. I'm not impressed in the slightest. So I think social media, girl boss culture, and kind of American culture have a lot to answer for when it comes to that.
God, flipping out. And yeah, just it's like so hard to escape this like constant need to be productive, isn't it?
It is. And then I find that some of the messaging from people on social that are telling you to slow down, don't.
It's a
They're
yeah,
like
it's a
just like
total
throwing memes at you about rest. And I'm like, but you're always online. What are you doing? Like, why are you telling me to calm down and sleep? Like, what are you doing?
yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Because they've kind of capitalized. It's become capitalism in itself, mindfulness,
Yes.
and which is so sad because it's just such an ancient practice of like just being, and we've lost
Mhm.
it. We've all lost it.
Yeah,
And now
for
there's like,
sure.
you have to use an app to do
And
mindfulness
then and
now.
then you have to pay a lot of money to
Yeah,
use that app, where you just have someone going, and now be quiet.
yeah, it's madness,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah,
God.
it's yeah, I mean, and I've subscribed to, and I still subscribe to some of those, because you just go, well, I guess you can help me. Will this be helpful? And sometimes it is, but it's it's gone into this really weird, messed up stage, the wellness and mindfulness, when really those are some of the most simple and most affordable things. And yet
Yeah.
we have, you know, fancy white ladies who want to sell it to you in different ways. And it's really messed up.
Oh, it's just like tell people to go to bed. Go to bed.
Have some
Simple.
water, eat
Yeah,
as fresh as food as you can afford, and go to bed.
yeah,
There you
pretty
go.
much. Simple extra.
Turn
Yeah,
off your phone.
exactly. Turn off your phone. My God, yes, this is
Yeah.
one of the worst by far. Technology has done to
Yeah.
people. Actually, my God. And actually, I think I'm just circling back to actually something you mentioned earlier about it's approaching your manager with difficult conversations.
Mhm.
Now, how do you gain the confidence to actually do this?
I don't know. I have I have spent, I mean, honestly, some of the hardest conversations I've had I can tell you how much preparation I've put into these. Like, you finally manage to get the meeting, you book it in, and you're like, okay, cool. I have 4 days until this conversation's happening. Um, I I find, especially with certain personality types, I find those conversations really, really hard. I've got better at it. I think you build a resilience to it. And I don't even think it's a matter of building confidence. I think it's just being able to go, is what I want from this person worth sweating and panicking a bit in this conversation? I'm going to guess the answer is yes. And so, like, what I did for one of the worst conversations that I had to have, I wrote out in a notebook what I wanted to say. And it was very long, it was many pages. And then I did it again, but shorter that time. And then I did it again with some bullet points. And I am not afraid to go into a meeting with a notebook with my bullet points and going, just so you know, I have my notes here just because I want to make sure that I answer all my questions and that we kind of cover all the stuff that, because I tend to forget sometimes. So, and just kind of gone through those. It didn't make any difference. It was still a pretty, not great conversation, but at least I felt that I went in there knowing what it was that I wanted to say. So I think you don't have to go in there trying to be somebody else, trying to be a confident business lady who's very assertive and can just go in this conversation like a lawyer and just go this and this and this and this and this and rip them to shreds and get exactly what you want and then leave the building and then go to the bar. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have like this idea of like what that conversation should go like, and it never goes like that. I think staying true to who you are and what your kind of personality is like, just trying to be honest. I just try to level with people. It doesn't always work, but it makes me feel better about the way that I've handled it and the way I've approached it. So for me, it was like, this is a hard conversation. I'm going to prepare and make sure that even when I'm flustered, I have right in front of me what it is that I want to say and what I'm hoping to achieve from this meeting. And being transparent about that if I need to. You can say, I'm a bit nervous just because this means a lot to me, or I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. Like, I don't see anything wrong with that either.
Yeah.
So I think less about confidence and more about knowing what you want from that conversation and doing the kind of prep work and whatever it is that you feel like you personally need to feel better in that meeting, to do that first.
Actually, yeah, that just reminded me of was it The Power of Vulnerability, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The best.
Good old Brené Brown. Yeah.
Good old Brene Brown. Yeah. I think reading, I highly recommend, because I think The Art of Vulnerability is an audiobook. It's kind of like a lecture, but it works as an audiobook or a podcast and is wonderful to listen to. And I think is been really kind of instrumental in how I've kind of changed the way I kind of view those conversations and life in general.
Yeah, my God.
Can't recommend Brene Brown's work enough.
My God, she's a guru, isn't she? My
Yeah.
God. Like,
And just so
absolute
plain
wizard.
talking and funny.
She
Just
is,
like
oh my
very
God.
common sense. Like, I love it.
Yeah, I've watched that TED Talk like a million
Yes.
times. God, so good. And it's just like, it's so true. Like, why are we so afraid of being vulnerable? You know, it should be okay. But, it's still all a work in progress by the look of it.
Yeah.
A lot of work that needs to be done. And actually, given that like the situation is pretty dire at the moment in, lockdown, job losses, do you think people are going to be even more afraid to have these conversations?
Yeah. So I think what the change from the conversations that I had when I was like researching the book and in the middle of that to the questions that I've now been asked for some articles that I've been doing for Refinery 29, and I've been doing like some live stream Q&As over on my Instagram. And the questions now are more like, I feel guilty that I still have a job and so many people don't. And so then I feel like I don't have the right to complain. Or if I do complain, that they'll view me as difficult and get rid of me. So these aren't new problems. I think if you've worked in a company during hard economic times or when they've done mass redundancies, it can make you feel very, very vulnerable, but also you have more work because there are less people. Those situations have already existed, and then the pandemic has just amplified those. So I think it is making people more cautious and anxious about having conversations about workload And if they have a problem with something, or if they have colleagues that have been made redundant and now they have more work, and the organization hasn't planned for that and isn't checking in. So I think we still need to have these conversations, but also I would plead to management to, you have to check in. Like, you should be having regular one-to-ones with your teams anyway. That should be just a standard thing that you do. It's harder because people don't regulate how many direct reports they have, right?
Yeah.
I think when at one company that I worked at, they capped it at 5 to 6, which I think is perfect. But how many people do you know that manage 12 people or 18 people or a whole flipping department of like 40 people, right? So I think you should have a small enough team to where you can manage having one-to-ones with them, even if it's every other week. But check in with your team. How are they actually doing? I know it's hard. I know that it can be emotionally taxing to have some of these conversations, and it can feel like you have, 10 children that you need to look after their feelings sometimes as a manager. But things are really difficult. And if you guys are having, redundancies and people are, no longer in the team and everyone's working long hours, you need to address that, because as an employee, there's kind of only so many times that you can flag stuff. If management doesn't care, if they haven't structured things to account for the fact that we have less people doing this work now. I mean, surely part of the point of you make someone redundant because their job is no longer needed, right? But then this work still has to be done. So how it's just like this weird, it's just so messed up.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
so messed up. Yeah.
And actually, as an employee, so how do you stop your own feelings from sabotaging you and your work? Because there was a really good reference which I really liked, which is the "everyone is out to get me" glasses reference. Because we're all guilty of that. I think just mind reading other people.
Yeah. Yeah, filling in blanks, which I think is happening a lot more now. If you're working remotely, it's very easy to fill in blanks and to kind of jump to conclusions when all of your communication is done on Slack or email. But as an employee, and just as a worker in general, how do you keep your feelings from kind of overwhelming your work or your perspective? Um, it's hard. It's really hard. I think, and I do have a section in the book where I talk about, like, okay, what are you bringing to the party? Is everyone out to get you? Or are you reading into an email something that isn't there? Sometimes it's as easy as going to your partner or to a friend and going, can you read this email? Does this seem insane to you? Because it feels like a direct personal attack, but I might be reading too much into it. So sometimes getting a perspective from somebody that doesn't work in your organization or doesn't work with you at all can be really useful. But I think a lot of it is unfortunately really boring kind of work on yourself. And okay, you're having difficulties like relational issues with your manager. What is that triggering for you? What is it about their behavior? What exactly is it that they are doing or saying that you find so upsetting? And then think about why you're finding it so upsetting. What is it bringing up for you? And then kind of taking it then, like, okay, well, if I feel like they don't trust me, if it's triggering like your imposter syndrome or whatever, you know, how can you navigate that? Is that a conversation with them? Do you need to, talk to a therapist about it? Like, what work do you kind of feel like you might need to do to better that situation, in addition to asking for what you need and having that conversation? So I think a lot of the management of your own feelings at work, unfortunately, comes from having to like do the self work and to kind of realize why you're finding things at work upsetting. And what I found really useful, because I do get angry at work. And I think a lot of people don't like to, especially women, we don't like to admit that we get angry. But this last year, I had to really reckon with the fact that, not only do I get really anxious, but a lot of that is based in me trying to like manage my anger around stuff. Because a lot of stuff just pisses me off at work. A lot of times I'm just like, are you like when I think particularly if you're self-employed and you haven't been like bathed in all of like the corporate BS, you just kind of go, this is ridiculous. So I've had to really learn how to accept that and just go, yeah, I'm really mad about this.
Yeah,
And go, okay, well, let me take a breath or several breaths before I respond to the Slack message, before I respond to this email, so that you're not constantly responding out of a place of reactiveness, because that's
totally.
just kind of like throwing gasoline on a fire a lot of the times. And sometimes it's because you're viewing things through a lens that is personal to you. And actually, this person hasn't written this email a certain way. You're just reading it that way. So I think always taking a pause is also really important. And sometimes, if you come across a bit angry and you go, look, I'm really frustrated about this, I actually think that's okay too,
Yeah,
because that's honest. And it doesn't mean that you yell at somebody. It doesn't mean that you bully someone or treat them poorly. But I think it's okay to go, you know what, I'm actually really upset about this. And to hold the rage in, but to still be honest about the way that it's affecting you.
no, you're right, because I think we have a habit of like suppressing quite a lot of different
Yeah.
emotions, and in the end, you just become numb as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, or just completely, you just come across completely weird sometimes. I think if you're busy like trying to like suppress all this stuff. So I talk a lot about containment in the book when it comes to like your own, and I'm not talking about like very serious
Yeah,
mental health issues, but kind of like, I don't want to say your average, but like your average mental health issues, anxiety for one, uh, and doing the work that you know that you need to do to feel better and to feel okay. And I think if everyone kind of did that work to kind of know where the border is of being your authentic self at work as much as you can, but also being very aware of your mental health needs. And when you know that you're not having a good day, and kind of knowing where that line is and keeping your stuff as best you can to yourself. Because I think most toxic working environments are because everyone's stuff is just bleeding all over the
yeah,
place. There are no boundaries. No one's trying to contain their own stuff. And it creates that horrible environment where everyone's in their pockets and everyone's problems or everyone else's problems. You don't want that. So
God,
being able to just kind of ring fence your own stuff and manage your own stuff, and to speak up and go, you know what? I probably shouldn't be in public today. I probably shouldn't be in the office today. Do you mind if I
yeah,
just, pretending we're allowed in offices, pretending that you can commute, and then asking to go home? But it might be, you know what? Like in this situation, I cannot do Zoom calls today.
yeah,
I'm
just
really
can't
sorry.
cope.
Or I can't have my camera on today.
Yeah,
Sorry. Can you take the
definitely.
lead on this meeting? I'll be there, but to be honest with you, I don't think I'm the best person to lead this today. I don't see anything wrong with that, because providing you've had a conversation so people have context, right?
Yeah,
Otherwise it's
totally.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, you've been through loads of like challenging situations. Like I think you addressed quite a lot of them whilst you were like, for example, working as the editor in chief at the Pool, which obviously a really
Yeah.
tough situation. And for you, like, how did you manage to keep your head held high, even after losing that job, and then with everything that happened with that company?
Hmm. I think because I had built up a lot of resilience,
Mm,
and but in my last job before that, um, I felt like I did a lot of work on my sort of work self and my professional self in my previous job. So then when this situation with the pool collapsing happened, I had learned that being honest um, was my sort of best move when it came to, by the time I left my previous job, I went into every meeting just being honest, and not bleeding all over the place, sort of super emotional, my contained, honest self, right?
mhm,
So I think from doing that, I was then able to speak publicly on publicly on social media about what was, or at least what I, as much as I could share about the very limited information I had about what was happening
Yeah.
at the pool. And I was very honest with my team. I, you know, we would have meetings and keep meetings, even if the meeting was, hi guys, I'm so sorry. I don't have any updates for you. And we're really upset that we actually don't have any updates for you. But I didn't want you to fill in the blanks of why we canceled this meeting. Right. And, you know, they saw me cry. They saw me cry. They saw me lose it one day in the office when something else ridiculous happened. And I had to like take myself off into the boardroom and hide in the corner and have a little cry. But, you know, that was honest.
Yeah.
And like, we're all just human beings in a really,
Yeah.
really tough, horrible situation. And it meant that, okay, I could go have a moment and cry. And then the person that was our kind of interim CEO at the time could then go, right, let me have this conversation with this person and take care of this for you, you know? So I think being honest, because if I had tried to address that situation in that moment, that would have been pretty embarrassing, because it's knowing when to kind of take yourself out of a situation and being honest and transparent. I think that's the kind of way that I approached it. And I think because I did that, I was able to, I think because I kind of faced it head on, I felt more comfortable afterwards and not holding on to a lot of deep shame about it, because I felt I had dealt with it as honestly and as transparently as I possibly could.
Yeah, that's really, really brave, because that's such a tough situation, and because you weren't just the only person in this, I'm sure you felt quite responsible for everyone as well.
Yeah, it was a weird thing being, you know, 4 months into a job and feeling so responsible for everyone, for all of our freelancers, for all of our contractors, our suppliers, our, you know, and I didn't own the company, so, but you know, as editor in chief, it should be your responsibility. You should feel that way, right? And I think not enough managers and leaders have that sort of implicit sort of, this is my team, I am responsible for them, and I will shield them from as much as I can, and I will stand up for them as much as I can. I think I mentioned in the book, one of the best pieces of kind of management advice I was given was from one of my my BuzzFeed colleagues in Australia, who said, you know, the best managing editor I've ever had. She was tough, but we always knew that she had our backs. And I really adopted that and have tried my very best to, in every management situation, to have my team's back, to shield them from the crap as much as I can, and to be transparent and as honest as I can at the same time with them, and choosing what information they absolutely have to know. And because sometimes you do have to time what you tell people, which is the other crappy part of being a manager, right? Sometimes you know stuff and you're like, God, I can't tell my team this yet. I need to find the best way to do it. So
that's tough. And actually, does that mean, do you think it's more important to be respected than liked?
Yes, my initial feeling is yes. Being liked as a boss. I mean, I was talking to someone about this the other day. I was like, this is the thing, right? Is that I've been very lucky, and I've had a lot of my ex-colleagues speaking publicly about my book and being like, oh, I've loved working for Cate. And I also know that there are people who have not liked working for me. And that's the reality of it. That is the reality of it. If you go into management positions trying to be liked, you're probably not going to be a very good manager, because you have to make a lot of tough decisions, a lot of business decisions, and that involves letting people go. You are not giving somebody the pay raise that they've asked for because you're not able to, for various reasons. It's not fun. It is not a fun thing to manage people. Can you enjoy it? Yes. But is it like a fun, pleasurable thing? Absolutely not. And you have to take it seriously, because people's careers are in the palm of your hand. And if you care more about them wanting to be your pal and them inviting you to the pub every day and telling you, oh my God, I love you, you're such a good boss, versus challenging them and going, hey, thanks for your self-evaluation. Let's talk about this part, because it's interesting to me that you think that you're totally nailing this when I actually think that you should be trying a bit more with this section or this thing.
Right.
Being able to have those conversations and challenge your team, and to challenge even your best performers, to not just do better, but to do differently and to challenge themselves. A lot of those conversations are so hard, because it's not just the disciplinary stuff that's hard. It's the trying to bring out the best in people that is hard, and not everyone can do that. So I think if you're putting like me first, that's never going to happen. And it might be that they respect you, but they don't want to go get lunch with you, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. And I think it's something that you kind of have to reckon with yourself as a manager, to just go, you know what, these people are not going to be my pals, they're not going to necessarily like me, and that's fine, as long as, we're respectful of each other, and I feel like I'm challenging them to do better. And then hopefully one day they will be able to go, you know what, I didn't particularly like working for that guy, but I definitely improved and learned working for him.
That's important for sure.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember the section on the post-it note. Oh God. And I actually wanted to ask you about that, which is, have you ever felt disrespected at work? And I'm assuming that was one of those moments.
Yeah, I mean, I put it in a book and had them replicate what the post-it looked like.
I loved it. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I've had some situations where you just kind of like, you don't even realize that it's happening until it's done, and you're kind of like walking around the corner and you're like, what just happened? Or even a year later reflecting on some stuff and being like, why was that okay? Why on earth did I not say anything? Why on earth did I think that was just business as usual, when clearly is not only business as usual, it's really disrespectful and probably illegal. Like, yeah, I've definitely, the post-it was a time that I felt, because the post-it was just part of a lot of other stuff. It was like one thing that happened alongside so many other things, but it was definitely one of the more ridiculous things that happened. Yeah, no, that I laugh at it now, but at the time, I did not appreciate getting that posted by any means.
I was like, oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah,
Oh,
pretty
Jesus.
ridiculous.
No, and I love the Sex and the City reference, because that was exactly what I thought of when that happened. I was just like, oh my God, your manager just basically broke up with you with a post-it.
Yeah, she burgered me.
Yeah, she burgered you. And actually, so that we don't have those kind of ridiculous scenarios in the future, how do we ensure we create sort of a respectful environment, for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, again, that kind of comes down to management, but we all contribute to that as well. So I think, as they call it, individual contributor or an employee, containing your stuff, treating your colleagues with respect and empathy, even if you don't personally like them. Be pleasant. Like, you don't have to be everyone's best friend, and I don't mean be fake, but just, basic manners with people. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Keep your stuff to yourself. Try to keep your own anxieties, or I don't want to say feelings, but keep your crap to yourself. Put a ring fence it. I think from an employee standpoint, that's really helpful. Being honest, being clear about what you need. If everyone kind of worked on their communication skills, that would be wonderful. And rather than jumping to conclusions, just kind of going, hey, I don't quite understand your email. Can we maybe just have 2 seconds so we can just kind of chat about it? Sweaty, yes. But will you feel better afterwards? Absolutely. or you'll feel worse, but then at least oh no, they meant to send me that crappy email and it's
Yeah.
not just me. And so then we need to deal with that, and then from a management perspective, my God, I think at the very least, be empathetic, be a human being, check in with your team, self-evaluate. If you
Mm,
think that you're not managing people and you get consistent feedback that your team is unhappy, perhaps think about that.
yeah.
Because I've known so many managers who have had negative feedback, and their bosses know, and nobody cares.
Hmm.
That's so difficult. But I think making sure that your team are okay, that they, even if there's maybe nothing you can do about the workload, trying to manage it better, lowering your expectations, like just be a human being. I think
Yeah.
so. Really, some really basic stuff.
Yeah.
It's
No,
just
no.
everyone work on your communication. Everyone try to kind of like be self-aware and contain your gremlins, and look after each other a bit better. And I think that
Definitely.
that might help.
I like the fact that you said don't bring your whole self to work, because
No,
it's
please
so
don't.
true. I think people get really into that idea because they think, oh yeah, yeah, we can be a family, and it's just like,
No,
mm,
and it's not a please don't do that because I don't want to hear about it. It's please don't do that because you're probably not safe.
mm,
Companies don't actually know what to do with your whole self. They don't know what to do with your dark bits. They can't like hold space for you in the same way that your partner, your friends, your family can. And in the same sense, like why should they?
yeah,
It's work.
it's
I
work.
don't know.
Yeah.
Like you can't, those two things are constantly at odds with each other. You're not a family, even if you're a small team and get on really well. You're still not family. This is still a working environment. It's still capitalism and business,
Mhm.
and you're getting paid. Like, let's not confuse those two things. And yeah, just they don't know what to do with you, especially if you're working in a toxic environment.
Yeah.
That's not safe for you to just
Mm-mm.
bring all your stuff and be like, this is the real me. And they're just like, ooh,
Yeah.
we didn't mean that. Don't be open like that. Don't be yourself like that. We didn't mean like that. They don't know what to do.
Hmm. So, any last words for the future? Do you think there's hope?
Yeah, no, I do. I'm hopeful that the horribleness, the awfulness, the, you know, extremeness, is that a word? Of excuse me. The how tough and extreme the last year has been, and how, probably the first half of 2021 is going to be as well. I know, Saz, but like, I hope that the priorities change. I hope that people go, oh, we can do flexible working. We can figure out a solution to how complicated the childcare situation is for people. Wow, we've all had a really, really tough year. How can we look after each other a bit better? I want the perspective on so many things to change, and uh, they have to. And I hope that also, just your regular person goes, what's actually important to me? Is it commuting 5 days a week and never being home and only, seeing my home from 9 p.m. to 11:30 when I go to bed? Like, is that how you is that how we want to do things going forward? So I think there definitely is hope. I think, if anything that's hopefully going on and the change that's happening in the States can maybe
Yeah.
be a sign of that. That'd be wonderful. But like overall, I have hope. But I think it's not just down to certain people to make
Mm,
those changes. It kind of has to be across the board. So
yeah. So true. Ah, Kate, thank you so much.
oh,
I
thank
really appreciate
you.
it. And it's so nice talking to you. It's
You
been so
too.
long.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, so long. And yeah, no, thank you so much. Those are really, really great questions.